Welcome to Snakes and Otters, a pointless discussion of eternal questions. Get ready, we're about to live in your head rent-free.
Hello, Otterites. This is episode 197. I am Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis.
And wow, this audio sounds great.
Doesn't it, though?
Yeah, I tell you, gentlemen, we just listened to the last episode, and it was phenomenal.
Well, it is as advertised.
Bits of it, yes.
That's right. A game changer all the way around, for sure.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
We are back here, Studio M, Nakatomi Plaza,
30th floor.
behind the waterfall, just down the hall from Ellis.
Yes.
We have our Tascam Mixcast 4. Robert has got his fingers on the sliders, and we're getting it rolling.
We are.
That's right.
This
Warp
is
speed,
exciting.
gentlemen.
This is going to be, because we're all gadget kind of guys. We love our tech. This is going to be fun, and we're just going to be giggling about it like schoolgirls for episodes to come.
We apologize for that, but lean into it, listeners. You'll enjoy it just as much
I'm
as
as
we
happy as a 12-year-old girl.
With what?
Happier than a pig in slop? I mean, we can keep going on this one here.
I think that I'm stealing that one from a Mike Myers bit, though.
Oh, yeah. Maybe.
When he does Sprockets.
Sprockets?
He's Dieter from Sprockets.
Oh, yes.
I'm
yes. Dieter.
happy as a 12-year-old girl. So this episode, guys, is, of course, Code of Honor.
Code of Honor, yes.
Code of Honor for June 2023. And as a follow-on to last episode about the idea of building a government. Okay, you've won your independence colonies. Now what? They had to build a government. But fortunately, they were equipped to do so because this is all they did is sit around thinking about what makes good government. So these are going to be all quotes about what does that mean? What does a good government look like? What examples are we accepting? What examples are we rejecting? And so on. Does that sound like a good synopsis, guys?
That's good. That's good. It's very good.
Like that?
Yeah. Yeah. Just quotes generally from, but not necessarily have to be. I think Martin and I are choosing from founding fathers.
Yes.
Francis is not.
No.
He went more high level concept.
Well,
Yeah.
we'll see.
Yes.
Well, high level, but yet low brow because it's from Twain.
That's right. Well, hey, we did those Twain episodes are some of my favorite episodes, actually.
Oh yes,
Those were some really good ones we did. And the man is still an amazing wit.
Yeah.
And he
Yeah,
cuts
absolute
right through the
genius.
Felger carb, as they say.
Yes.
yes. All right, so Martin.
Yes, I think I'll go first here. And
Oh, you're going to go for. I thought maybe you're going to.
No. He needs to go first because mine
I think
works better in
it'll
his
work.
context.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, I
that's
think
fair.
I'll need to go first. And here's the danger that I've noticed of the way we're arranged. I felt a little bit, as good as last episode was, I felt like a little bit it was just a conversation between me and Robert. That we froze Francis out just a touch.
Well, sometimes when you guys get going, it's hard to get a word in edgewise. I will admit.
Oh, really?
Oh.
You're saying that?
Yes,
You.
I am.
Oh my God!
Once I get the ball, I'm reluctant to let it go. But
And that's
Yes.
acceptable. That's
I don't know
fine with
how
me.
many times I've sat here listening to the two of you just waiting for an opening. So, yeah.
well,
that makes it
apparently
good.
what goes around does come around. There.
Yes,
Sounds like.
That makes it even. But just somehow or another, the way we're sitting, it's more comfortable for me to kind of focus on Robert, and so it felt a little like just a two-person.
Yes, I am
conversation.
sitting slightly to your right in front of you, whereas Francis is entirely to your left.
Yes, he's a hard left.
I've never been
Wow.
called that.
Yes, I was going to say, that's got to be a first.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So I'm going to be more intentional about making sure I'm including Francis in my gaze and my.
well, I appreciate that.
Discussion.
Well, I'm actually in a great position because I can see both of you equally. I'm just a very short turn of my head, and I don't have to move my mouth from the microphone to do so.
Yeah, I don't even have to turn my head. I
Yeah,
can see
so
you
that's
first.
awesome.
yeah,
So
you're the
because
one that has to turn from side to side.
Yeah, so we've got the awesome mics, XLR mics.
Yes, it
High
does make a
quality
difference.
Level. I mean, this is it's like the Rolling Stones on stage here, guys.
Well, yeah, but who's going to be Mick and who's going to be Keith?
Well,
I don't think any of it. I don't think anybody besides Keith has done enough drugs to actually be Keith.
Oh yeah, I can do a very mean Keith Richards impersonation. Happy. That's about it. Yeah,
I like that. I like that a lot.
yeah. I was gonna say I could take Keith if you guys want. You can fight over who's Mick, and the other one gets to be Bill Wyman or Charlie Watts. I mean, if you want to be Charlie,
Charlie's dead.
well, I understand that, but somebody.
Ronnie Wood. It's okay. We can
That's
do
true. Ron was. I mean, he is good. He is really good.
Ronnie Wood. Yeah, I mean, he revitalized the Stones.
So, in other words, it sounds like you're going to take over for Ronnie Woods. That puts you at the Jagger position, sir, Mr. Robert.
That has possibilities.
Oh yeah, I can understand that.
I know that Mrs. Robert would like those possibilities.
No, that's old Mick. You know, he's got to go feed them babies because he's got bunches of them.
Apparently,
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, doesn't he have still like a teenager?
I don't know.
Oh yeah, he does. Yeah, because
Teenager?
he
Okay.
keeps reproducing.
Because he's 70 something now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, very much so. And
I would have thought he was older than that.
he is. He's in his 70s. We'd have to look that one up. Don't have time to do that, but we might get to it here. Go to your quote, and I'll probably look it up.
Okay, so did a little research on this one earlier in the week to try to find some stuff, and once you start doing this, you become again enthralled with the wisdom of men like Madison and Hamilton. And again, they were the ones who wrote all this out. They were the ones making the polemics.
Oh, polemics. Sorry.
Word boner. For getting the Constitution passed. Thank you,
Right.
Robert.
The Federalist Papers.
Yes, the Federalist Papers were meant to convince the populace to support the new Constitution.
Right.
And
Because
get
that's
it
something
passed in the states.
that's something we often kind of forget.
We don't do this anymore. We don't persuade.
Well, not only that,
We
'cause you're right.
bludgeon.
We don't persuade.
Yes.
As a matter of fact, I read some stories recently online about the state of debate in high schools and colleges. It is not what we. I mean, I wasn't in speech and debate. I wasn't part of that in the forensic teams at my high school, but I knew all of them, so I knew what they went through. It is nothing like that anymore. Matter of fact, it's all ideology and who can yell the loudest.
Ad hominem attacks and things like that.
Well, it's very.
Ad hominem.
I don't know if that's a real word, but I mean, it's not like.
absolutely is. It's a Latin phrase.
Well, it is, but I
That's
mean,
right.
Word boner.
Thank you. That's right.
it's not like when you use milieu. You know, I mean, that's a real. I mean, that's like a 12-inch word boner.
And hubris.
Hubris. That's always a
yeah,
good one
hubris,
too.
that's-
I do. All it takes is two of us to vote that it
That's
it
true.
makes it
That's
happen,
true.
and it's
That's
true.
true.
Point of parliamentary procedure, Robert.
That's correct.
Very
That's
good.
right.
Yes. But anyways, debate is not what it once was.
Yeah.
But what I was really going at was it wasn't just because they passed it out of the Constitutional Convention. It was not a sure thing that it would pass the states.
Right.
correct.
And again, Madison had to kind of use this dodge, this kind of Pelosi pass it so you know what's in it sort of deal, promising, yes, I'll add a Bill of Rights guaranteeing certain individual liberties at the end as long as we pass it.
Right.
Let's not add those now because then that's going to be kind of endless as if we start taking those pieces apart one by one, we'll never get anywhere.
Right. And who knows where that stops.
Well, it's also a bit of a carrot to make them do it quickly because if you really want
Yes.
this, we got to do this first.
Well,
So-
it's a bit of a carrot, but it's also a bit of a stick because
I know, isn't that beautiful? Brilliant.
what if you don't do it after it's passed?
That's right.
Madison's just incredible.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. I mean, they all are just,
Yeah.
we don't cherish what they gave us and we don't cherish them enough.
Yeah. So here's my Madison quote.
Read it slowly because this is a bit involved.
Yes. And again, this is from a Federalist paper. It's from Federalist number 10, written in 1787. Pure democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have, in general, been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths. So
I'm so amazed with this. It's essentially a commentary on. It says pure democracy in the Platonian sense, but really it's equating that to what we know it to be: mob rule.
mob rule.
Yes.
That's right. The tyranny of the 51%, which in our modern day and age, that's kind of where we've landed. Is all you need is that, and you can destroy your opposition.
Right. Or as we often like to put it, it's two foxes and a rabbit voting on what's for dinner.
That's right.
Whereas a republic is, when the rabbit is armed.
Yes.
The great equalizer.
And again, right. So this, in framing their arguments for passing the Constitution, they are starting from this premise of, I'm going to lay out other options and knock them all down.
Right. And that is what rhetoric and debate is
Right.
that is the ideal.
Rhetoric, the word. Oh, I'm so glad you used that, because that's so much of what we do. But
Yes.
it's a lost art. Not to go down a rabbit hole, I don't want to go there.
But it is. I mean, that's what I was just
Yeah.
talking
Yeah,
about.
that's what I'm sensing here.
If you can't lay out your opponent's argument, if you can't understand it, then you can never defeat it properly.
Right, and that's exactly what Hamilton and Madison and Paine are doing in the Federalist Papers, setting up the arguments against what's been passed, knocking it all down, and then saying, okay, so that means our option is we adopt this.
Right.
It
And
will
not
work.
straw man arguments either. These are not just
They're they are anticipated criticisms.
yes.
And it goes back to something that I think is so critical. You know, you hear this a lot of times in organizing in groups and meetings and things where there are no bad ideas. And I think that is the most ridiculous, absolutely awful, terrible, inefficient, unsustainable approach that is possible. And that's exactly what Madison is doing here, saying, hell yes, there are bad ideas.
Right. So
And,
And I'm
let me
gonna
show you why.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you why, and we're going
That's
to
right.
eliminate those, and that's going to leave us with this one option.
you want to put the lie to that, and anybody who says that in a meeting. Now, granted, you can never get away with this, but once
Yeah.
you say, "Well, all right, there's no bad ideas. How about this idea? How about we tape your mouth shut, bend you over that chair, and tie it to you with your pants around your ankles, and we each have a go at you? How about that idea? That's not a bad idea, is it? I mean, essentially,
That's a touch extreme. You might have just said, you know,
You put duct tape over your mouth and let you sit in the corner. And you
we
kind of
could
get the
have
same
left
point.
it at that, or you could have said, you know, there are no bad ideas. Okay, well, how about if we get a lot of railroad cars and put all the Jews on them?
right? I mean, I was going for the personal effect there.
Yeah, that's right. Well, you're exactly right. And I think it's just, I mean, the creativity is not a function of a number of people. The more people you have, I don't want to use the word diversity because that's not what I'm saying, but it's of plurality, of multiplicity.
Well,
Creative.
you know, diversity of ideas, of opinions, is not necessarily a bad thing.
Well, not at all.
But the only time it gets to be bad is when your opinions are offered as divinely inspired, for lack of a better term.
Yeah.
Unquestionable.
Yes, when your opinions and ideas are offered as something that cannot be
your-
questioned.
When your opinions
criticized.
are not a criticism of the idea, but a criticism of the person offering the idea.
That's
Any
certainly
of that,
one
yes.
of the ways. Yes,
Yes.
that's right. But
I mean, anything where basically your opinion is already decided and you absolutely cannot listen to others. I mean, you know, we know what we're talking about. It's basically where there is no true discussion. There is no true mixing and
applying moral principles.
applying moral principles, but also no creating an amalgamation of what is good and best in all that we have to offer.
or even a denial of that there is good and there is bad. You know, in many respects, the idea of every idea is equal is irrespective of its goodness or badness or its merit.
Anybody
Yeah.
who says all ideas, there are no bad ideas, they always mean there are no bad ideas that I approve of
Well, there are no bad ideas except yours.
or except yours. Yes.
Well, yeah, and it's an attempt to try to get somebody to step up and put some effort forth. I get that. Usually in those discussions.
Yeah, I mean, you get in the committee where everybody just stays silent. You have
Right.
to do something. So you put out,
Yeah,
there are
it's-
no bad ideas, kick them out.
Yeah.
And yes.
But ultimately, if you think through that statement, that's got to be the most.
Yeah, I mean, somebody's going to put one out, and
and it's going to be stupid.
you're right. As the manager, as the leader, you're going to try to smooth it over. But basically, yes, the response should be immediately, yeah, no, that's a bad idea. Can we move on? So,
Right, and granted, that is a tricky line to walk because you don't want to smack somebody down so
Right,
hard that they will
right.
never come up with anything else. Although I have met a few people that maybe should never come up with anything else in a meeting.
Well, and that's part of the problem. I think it goes back to it's always the right people, and that's all it ever is. The idiots shouldn't be in the meeting to begin with. They shouldn't rise to that level.
That's part of the problem that that, you know, is a danger in both a democracy and a republic is that you create a ruling class. Mm-hmm. And that's a very bad thing.
Yeah, because it becomes completely divorced from its merits.
Well, very rarely, I think, does a ruling class have merits at all.
That's very good. Very
Well,
put.
because the implication is that only these people are either qualified, good enough, whether that be morally or intellectually or financially
ideologically
or ideologically, to have input on how things should be done. Right. That is a very, very bad way to go.
Lincoln had it the best way with his team of rivals. He brought in all those folks that disagreed with him so he would have their voices, and they were not afraid to question him. And so in doing, pulled that wheat from the chaff very quickly and came up with one of the best functioning cabinets in modern history.
Yes, a ruling class, by definition, is very quickly going to become an echo chamber.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's a good word.
That is,
they did try to guard against that. I mean,
yes,
it is in there to again, that system of checks of.
Well, I think that's what the House of Representatives
Right.
was meant to be.
Right.
Was that guard against those 6-year term senators?
Yeah, well, and of course, the House is envisioned as the central organ.
Yes.
Kind of the first among equals, sort of.
Well, that's why the Speaker of the House is third in line and not the President of the Senate.
True.
Right.
True.
I mean, because that is their experience. Is this equivalent of the House of Commons should be the center of the world.
It's the Vox Populi, the voice of the people.
Yeah, it is. It is the most direct voice of the people. Exactly right.
And they are the most answerable to the people because until 100 years ago, little more than 100 years ago now, the Senate was appointed by the states. The senators were appointed. There was no direct election.
Right.
Yeah.
And honestly, I think that was...
And the 2-year terms, again, makes them more answerable.
That too, yes. The 2-year terms and the fact that they have to run for re-election as opposed to reappointment.
Yeah.
And honestly, there are times when I think that was a bad move to take the senators away from the state governments. Because we lost a check there. Because now senators really are, other than the fact that they serve longer and there are fewer of them, there's very little difference between one politician and another in that respect. The special interests own them.
You'd never make the argument popularly.
No, you
Of course,
wouldn't.
it goes against our,
Well,
dare I say, to go back to to Martin's quote, it goes against the democratic process. However, Madison is simply saying that the democratic process, by its very nature, is flawed.
Yes, the direct democratic nature.
Direct democratic
Yes.
nature. That's correct.
And, the people who appoint the senators were still answerable to the people at home.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Just as...
Yeah. But it was seen, and that the direct election of senators is a response to what it felt like that it was a machine thing. It was strictly
Yes.
a special interest thing.
Well-
again, you take somebody like a Mark Hanna. He's a senator because he managed the successful presidential campaign of William McKinley.
Right.
Could he have won an election in Ohio on his own? Maybe, maybe not.
But
he goes to the Senate basically as a reward.
sure.
for-
And again,
so
that
it
is
became a reaction to the special interest nature.
And it
of-
still happens in times where a senator dies or resigns in office and the governor appoints.
right. But I mean, that can happen with a representative. And once you're in office, it's very difficult to get you out.
Well, you'd be amazed. The guy that took Obama's seat when he was elected president was appointed, and they had a big issue with him for a while, and he did not. He when the term went out, he
Illinois
was
and
gone.
Chicago politics are very
That's
unique.
correct. Yeah.
But the reason I regret in some ways that change is that it took away one of the checks.
Yeah. Yeah.
And part of the reason for taking it away is that it's, in a way, it's kind of a moot check now because the states are subordinate to the federal government now, whereas when this was put together, they were not. It's a holdover from when the United States are instead of the United States is.
You're right. The state now essentially has no voice in its federal representation.
Right,
Not direct.
because the state it's an entity,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not the same kind of entity it once was.
Yeah, and it can be bad in a couple of ways. Not only do they not have as much of a voice, they don't take as much responsibility.
Right.
States-
Everybody looks to the federal government
Yeah,
for
the
everything.
states, often state governments will go, and just, well, the feds need to do this.
And partially that's because the feds have put their finger into everything too.
Yeah.
It's almost like a conspiracy. They have let the feds put their finger into everything, and now they can say, "Well, the feds have their finger in everything. Why should I do that?"
Economies of scale get to it too. It is follow the money in many respects.
Well, it's follow the money, and some things are appropriate to the federal
Very much
government.
so. That's right.
But
It's the-
many things are not that
Yeah,
the federal
the
government.
vast, rampant cuttlefish of Dominion.
Okay.
Word boner.
Yeah, I have to give you that one.
As P.G. O'Rourke put it.
Oh, okay. That wasn't unique
That,
to you.
that wasn't a Martin. That is stolen from P.J.
But that's okay. It's
It's
still
okay.
a-
Still,
that's
yeah.
still
You,
good
you
for
had
me.
the wisdom to wield it, sir.
Yes.
Vast, rampant cuttlefish of Dominion.
That's a great way to put it. But
So, are we ready to move on to Francis? Or I'm sorry, Robert. do you
no,
have
I was just going to
something
say.
else?
So, what he's essentially saying is that direct democracy, where everybody gets a vote, is a recipe for disaster.
It's mob rules.
It's mob
again,
rules.
It is very much if 51% decide that we're going to kill the firstborn.
Well, there we go.
There we go. We're killing all the
Yeah,
firstborn.
there's absolutely no moral compass necessary for that.
Yeah, there's no check. Again, the genius of the system is even though the House of Representatives is supposed to be the, copy,
Voice of the people.
it's supposed to be the center jewel of the whole system, it can be checked by an independent judiciary. It can be swayed, directed is the wrong word, but influenced by a strong executive. This balance of
Well,
the system.
And
is-
today, honestly, I think it's seen as the junior member of Congress. It is no longer
Yeah.
considered the jewel.
Yeah. But it was intended to be
Yeah.
that it would be the center of the world, the first among equals.
Well, it was that place where, actually, both, especially in the Senate,
Yeah.
debate was expected,
Yeah.
and it was, you look at some of the great orators of the 19th century. They were senators. They came from the Senate, or they went to the Senate.
Yeah, Webster and
Webster,
Sumner.
especially, yes. He's the prime example. He was considered the great orator of the day, although Lincoln's 2-minute speech overshadowed his great oratory of the day at Gettysburg, which is it was almost the death knell of that sort of thing.
Yeah.
That's Edward.
I'm sorry, you're right. Edward,
That's
yes,
right, sorry.
Sorry.
Yeah, but your point is still valid, but I just want
Yes.
to make that slight correction.
Yes. Yeah. Actually, he was a man. You're right. It was him, not Webster. But Webster was the guy in the Senate.
Yes.
Yeah,
Or that-
if
But
I'm
Edward
right,
Everett, he was considered the guy.
preeminent orator of his day.
Yes.
That's why he was there.
Exactly.
And everybody was expecting it was 2 hours, I believe it was.
Yes,
And
a
Lincoln,
stack of paper like a foot high
That's right.
that he never read from. Did it from memory.
yeah, that's just he was the real deal in many respects, but we didn't realize Lincoln changed what the deal was. It was a different game altogether.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. Lincoln changed it from checkers to chess.
Right.
Yeah, it's-
well, and that speech at Gettysburg is the linchpin that turned it from the United States are to the United States is.
Very much
That is
so.
that is pretty much seen as the turning point for that.
I think there's a good time now to segue to Francis's quote.
Okay, because I'm going to speak about another great American who spoke so eloquently, and that's Mark Twain, post Lincoln, although somewhat coterminous with him. And the man's wit and his utter anti-verbosity, if that's a word.
I think we can give that the honor of.
Word boner.
I think so too. Yes, I was angling for that, I suppose.
That's going to get really overused quickly.
We are so prolific, gentlemen.
We are.
we do it. I mean, we put the words in there.
I know, but I don't want to make it such a thing where it becomes, blasé.
Because we've kind of already done like 6 this episode, haven't we? So
Yeah, it's been a lot.
Are we leaning into it a little bit? Probably.
Yeah, I think the first couple of episodes,
We'll even out. We'll skip. Make it a little bit easier.
But we do love our buttons.
We do.
That's right. I mean, it's a new toy, for gosh sakes. Come
Men
on, bring
love
it.
pushing buttons.
We do.
That's right. Sometimes they blow up in our face. That's okay. It happens. But
Whenever you don't push the red button.
that's not the wet one. Never the wet one. Anyway, Mark Twain. I'm gonna kind of pile on.
Glasses of bourbon in, and we're starting to quote Bugs Bunny. So
Yeah.
Daffy Duck.
Daffy Duck.
That's right.
Yes. Sorry, Francis. Please.
That's
go
okay.
ahead.
Mark Twain. I'm gonna continue to build upon what you said there with regards to democracy itself. You basically speak about the fact that it's not possible. And it's a bad idea.
Yeah.
I'm going to go a little bit more jaded, or Twain is, I should say, and it's just so brief, and so true. It says, if voting, his quotation is, if voting made any difference, they wouldn't let us do it. Now, that's about as jaded of a worldview as you can imagine. Of course, Twain is famous for that, as he was known to do at times. But does it not seem in many respects a valid criticism of the system that we have, that we vote, and in many respects it's borne out the fact that our voting rates are lower than they've ever been and continue to plummet every time there's an election.
Actually, I think this last presidential election, it went
came
up.
That's correct. There are moments, but as a general rule, from our regular, beyond the presidential election, but put it into the generals, voting records.
Yes, the trend is down.
Trend is down. People aren't voting, and we hear comments of, well, people in other countries died for that right, and you're not even bothering with that. I think some of it is the idea that Twain says, well, how does my vote make any difference?
But it's our inherent right not to give a shit.
That's true. That's right.
So I have.
Yes, sometimes your vote is to not vote at all.
Yeah.
That's correct. Yeah, saying that this doesn't affect me. I don't care. It's not worth my time.
But it can be a protest against what you're being offered as well.
Yes. Which is
Isn't
why
that
I
a
would
little bit of
prefer
a
to vote and vote
self-defeating?
for a third party.
I
Even
mean,
if it's,
yes,
even
I
if it's
mean-
a worthless endeavor.
Yes, I mean I would still vote.
Because there's multiple people you're voting for. There's multiple issues on the table.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you get to a point of it's a binary choice, and you find yourself voting for the lesser of two evils, you're still voting for a lesser.
Yes.
So
Yes.
but I have 2 pointed criticisms of Twain here,
Yes.
and hopefully I haven't had too much bourbon to make them make sense.
Continue.
So, first off, a counter positive example.
Okay.
The 14th Amendment, or I guess we could be a little broader, we can say 13, 14, and 15,
Right. The slavery amendments,
Yes.
basically.
Right.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
are passed through a democratic process. Not a direct vote one, of course.
Right.
But the Constitution includes a mechanism whereby a desire to amend it can be expressed from the people.
Yes.
And those amendments made a difference. They fulfilled the promise of the preamble. They made it real for all the people living on this continent. They made it,
Fulfilled the promise of the Declaration.
yes,
Of all men
fulfilled
are created equal.
Yes, it fulfilled the promise of the Declaration and of the preamble.
Mhm.
And
Well,
it,
maybe fulfilled is a strong word, but it certainly laid the groundwork.
yes, but it's,
Made it possible anyway.
yes, it is an announcement, and Robert, get ready with the button, of your first button, not the second button, but your first button. It is an acknowledgement of the,
Inherent dignity of the human person. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I actually have to go back and reassign that to a button. That,
oh, we didn't get that one on a button yet?
I had one in it, but I had erased it because I didn't know if I liked the original recording. But that is one we will definitely do because I know Martin loves it when I bring that up.
So to me, that is a
A time when the vote did matter.
yeah.
And if you can
but
prove it once, it's enough.
The democratic process provided something that made a real difference
But
to
I
the
would,
to the cultural, political, social makeup of a nation. And I think so. I think
it was an earthquake that changed the foundations.
yes.
That's
so
right, yeah.
so the one contraindication does prove
Disproves the rule.
yeah.
Well, but I don't think it does.
I knew you were going to say this. Yes.
Well, to be contrarian to your contrarian point,
I love that. Yeah.
but yet still contrarian to
Twain.
to Twain,
Yeah.
to Francis's point, is that first I don't think Twain would look at that and say, well, that's not the kind of voting that he's talking about, because that's not democratic voting. That's republic vote. That is a vote of the
Yes.
republic,
yes.
meaning
Okay.
the representatives of the people voted on that.
Yeah, you could make the argument that Twain's point is absolutely still valid in the thing you said here, because the vote of the people really didn't.
Right. It was not,
Was
a
not
direct- it
required
was
and
a
not
direct-
desired.
Well, that's
But the people
Had to elect those who did vote on it.
Right. Sent the people to the state legislatures who then approved these amendments.
is that a matter of semantics?
It's still the voice of the people. It's still Vox Populi to me. Yes, it's buffered because I'm a huge believer in small R republicanism.
Yeah.
Again, that's my quote.
Right.
But it is still an expression of the Vox Populi to say all of this blood has been shed. It has to be for a purpose.
Yes.
And that purpose now is the political equality of those who don't look like us.
Yes, but that's kind of putting the horse behind the cart. I said that deliberately, by the way, because just because the blood was shed does not mean it was necessarily a worthwhile endeavor to do. It was a worthwhile endeavor to do, which is what led to the bloodshed.
The bloodshed has to be sanctified in some manner. And this was
well, that's what Lincoln did at Gettysburg
Right.
Address.
right.
True,
I mean,
but
literally,
And the amendments are the then practical political expression
the lasting
of,
change, yeah.
of Gettysburg.
well,
Of the Gettysburg Address. How do you make what Lincoln said into something real? You amend the Constitution to guarantee.
Yes.
And
the
that was
political rights.
that's certainly Lincoln's intention in 1865. I mean, if you watch the movie, it's very clear that's about, we do this now because if we don't,
It'll
will
never
miss,
get
yeah,
done.
we will
It'll
miss
never
the
get
window.
but so what I'm saying is you guys are both arguing and kind of arguing past each other on this. And by argue, I mean what arguing really means. Presenting forth-
Rhetorical putting art.
Yes.
The art of rhetoric.
Yes. Because, yes, you are correct, Martin, in that the will of the people, maybe, because honestly, I don't know that if you asked a majority of if you asked everybody, if a majority said, absolutely, we must free the slaves, we must give them all the political rights of the white man, I don't know that you could have gotten 51% of them to agree to that.
Right. I mean, there's still a racial dichotomy to the nation.
Right. And you certainly couldn't have,
I won't question that a bit.
you certainly couldn't have gotten the Southern
Well,
vote
yeah,
to
they're
say
not gonna
that.
even know
Much
at all.
less, I'm not entirely sure you could have gotten 51% of the North. So on the one hand, that I think is an argument against it being the voice of the people, because that's the whole point of a Republican, small r, Republican form of government, in that you elect people to do what is right, not what the mob wants.
Right. You're buffering the passions of the
Exactly.
populace.
It's a moderating influence, tempering the volatility of the mob.
Volatility. Word boner.
So,
don't know
and
if that one counts,
that's
but okay.
yeah, well, volatility of the mob is what really gets it.
Yeah, yeah. It's
No, I love
it's
that
a
word.
phrase, not the word.
Yes.
It can
Well,
be
phrase boner doesn't work as well as word boner.
I understand.
Yeah. But I loved it. That's very, very well put.
And what you're talking about, Francis, I think is, and what Twain is saying is that because of that volatility of the mob, we don't really think about it. We don't get to vote on anything truly important,
Because
earth-shattering.
yeah, because
Of that volatility.
Yeah.
It's part of the design.
Yeah.
Because
Twain's right then.
Twain is absolutely right,
Yeah.
but you're right as well, because in the sense that the representative, the representatives of the people did what was right for the people, for all the people.
But it is still an expression of at least some portion of the people's voice.
A buffered,
Yes, it is.
A buffered indirect version.
Yes, it is.
It's
Ideally, that is the perfect example of your representative doing what is best for the country, no matter what their constituents think.
Yeah.
That is shooting for that ideal, hitting that ideal, which we so rarely do.
right. Just because the people want it doesn't necessarily mean it's the right thing to do.
Exactly. And just because the people don't want it,
That's the same. Yeah, exactly.
doesn't mean it shouldn't be done.
Yes, so that's criticism number 2 of Twain. So like I said, I had 2. One's a contraindicative example. This one is, but that's how the system's designed.
Right.
Right.
And which is exactly what I was saying.
Right.
Yes.
It's not supposed to swing one side to the other. It's not supposed to be
Extreme to another, because
Yeah.
one side of there is kind of inherent in the political party system.
Right.
But yes.
the whole system is designed to knock everybody down towards the middle. I mean, you have to think of the American system as a bowling alley. You're trying to keep the ball out of the gutters
Well, I was going to say loud and obnoxious
and full of beer.
and full of beer.
That's good, Robert.
That's good. That's good. I'm liking that. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, the idea here is to keep the ball out of the gutters and keep it in the center
While
of the
knocking
lane
down as many pins as
you
possible.
can.
Yeah.
Right. Knocking down the pins is the goal, whatever that policy goal is.
Right. And the pins in your lane, not the pins way over there, or the pins
And
way over
yes,
there.
You may not knock down all 10, but you might pick up the spare later.
Right. Which is what the Bill of
That's-
Rights
yeah.
was. That was picking up the spare.
Yes. And a lot of
Very good analogy,
legislation is picking up the spare. You get what you can get in a compromise right now.
Right. Because
And
generally
then
you
pick up the rest
recognize
later.
Yeah. And that's
A lot of legislation in American history is that way.
yes, it used to be that way.
Yeah.
Now it's an all or nothing thing for the
Yeah.
most part.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not always, because we see it that way often, because the compromises are often, well, we're going to put your really bad thing in so we can put our really bad thing in. It's
Yeah.
very rarely, well, let's figure out what the middle is that gets the most done for the most people.
Yeah.
And which is a really horrible thing.
But,
I am so, I never used to be this way,
But
but
that's, I mean,
so down on how things go about nowadays.
but I mean, to go after Twain is, yeah, it doesn't make a difference because it's not supposed to. It's not supposed to make a huge difference. It's supposed to move in baby steps. That's the whole design.
General trends as opposed to specific direct actions.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's a good way to put it.
Yeah. It's supposed to be baby steps. It's supposed to be knock down the pins you can on the first roll and pick up the spare later. And I just love this analogy that the American system is bowling.
Is bowling.
I'm going
yes.
to use
I'm
this
working on.
all the time.
I'm
now.
processing that as we kind of go through this, and I'm not finding any faults. I'm thinking it's pretty well.
Well, it
laid out.
it is a really good analogy, because when you think about it, well, first of all, now a perfect game is not
So-
as rare as it used to be as
I'm
far as
ready to run
bowling.
for president then.
I would. I honestly, I'm trying to decide whether or not I could vote for you. I probably could.
I think you can.
Well, certainly if you run against the current bunch of yahoos that are out there. Oh yeah, hell yeah, I'd vote for you. Early and often.
There are a few. I mean, we don't want to go into this, but there are a few candidates out there that are big about respecting the inherent dignity of the human person.
Yes,
that's
there
one,
are.
that's one of the big barometers. Yeah.
Yes.
So I mean, I would build my campaign around that. So
And the thing we often forget about the American system is that it is actually, baseball is another good analogy for it,
yes,
because it is designed to fail more than it is to succeed.
it's small ball.
It's playing small ball. Yes.
It's
because when you
get
think
the-
about
get
a
the
Hall of
singles,
Famer,
steal a base.
yeah, advance the runner,
It's
score
not
the
Aaron
run.
Judge. It's not. We're not
Not-
going for the big. We're not going yard here.
Right. We're not shooting for the 3-run homer every time. And that's the thing. we are
Sports analogies are
yay sports, as
Francis.
Beckett would say.
Yeah.
we're losing Francis here.
Yeah.
I don't think
That's, no, I'm okay with that. Yeah,
I
it's
don't
very
think
good
he
so far.
knows that those terms.
Yeah, well, that's all right.
That is
many of our
uncalled
listeners.
for, sir. I'm very well known as I used to play baseball. I'm very
Okay.
I enjoy the game and I'm knowledgeable about it.
Okay, so using baseball metaphors, we're not losing Francis.
Good.
No.
Good. So, but when you think about a Hall of Famer, somebody hits 300, they fail 7 times out of 10,
Yeah.
and the guy who struck out the most, is usually the guy who has the home run title.
Yeah.
And that's kind of the American system, is that with all the checks and balances, the point is to temper that unbridled power.
Yeah, and I think that is exactly
It's
the
to temper
center,
the mob.
the red hot center of the whole thing.
Yeah,
is
it's
that
to
tempering,
it's to make you think twice
moderating.
before you do something stupid. Now, you may still end up doing something stupid because history is replete with that.
Yeah.
But at least, hopefully, you will think 2 or 3 times before you do it. That's why there's supposed to be vigorous, healthy debate in Congress and in the newspapers. Granted, that's been replaced by Facebook, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And there is no such thing as healthy debate on Facebook or Twitter. But that's what's supposed to happen in the public square. People are supposed to debate this, and if the people are knowledgeable, where Twain fails is this, and this is because the people have failed Twain. If the people are knowledgeable, if that debate is happening in the public square, the representatives have almost no choice but to do what the people want, because the people will be aware and they will make them pay for their failures. Failure is not paid for anymore. It is rewarded more often than not.
Yeah, because getting one of them out of Congress is like getting a tick out of your arm.
That's a very good analogy. I
Or
like
as
that.
Jesse Ventura put it, dug in like an Alabama tick.
Pretty much, yeah.
So, you see extreme examples of clear ill health and mental incapacity, kind of like me with this bourbon. And they still get a vote.
Right, they still win. They get elected.
They still win. They still get a vote. They still there's no consequence to being.
A lunatic.
Yeah, well, just
Non-compos mentis.
yeah. Just
I like that better.
And I don't mean to be harsh on their conditions should evoke sympathy, but at the same time, these are not people who should be voting to determine the direction of our nation.
Right. Or have the ability to press buttons as
Pull the levers of power, as they say.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah. I feel for you. I feel for your circumstance, but you need to have the wherewithal to understand. You need to go ahead and
Leave the stage.
leave the stage.
Yeah.
The stage.
Yeah, to use
Well,
the Washington term. Yeah.
And not only that, why are the people not demanding a different
Yeah.
I think we underestimate sometimes the beloved nature of local representation to certain localities. I think that especially once you get in there, they're our guy or gal. There's
Yeah,
there is
us
a lot
versus-
to that.
There's a lot to that. That's one of the reasons. Once you've been in there a long time, it's very difficult because
once
you've proven yourself to be
Yeah.
able to walk the walk, talk the talk, bring home the bacon. It's not all that, but it is certainly part of
That's a
that.
huge part of it. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's why it's
bring home the bacon or be ideologically pure.
that's true too. That's right.
That is probably quickly replacing
Yeah.
bringing home the bacon.
Yeah, and to a degree, requesting someone like that leave the stage or pressing for it is admitting a mistake.
Well, it's admitting a
That we-
mistake.
that
It's
we
also
don't wanna
being
do.
it's also
But like you said-
being harmful to someone.
Yeah,
And that's
this is our guy. He may show up to Senate sessions in a hoodie and shorts, but he's our guy. And then that has traction. That has
it does,
mileage.
and you can make the argument that you get the representation you deserve.
Oh God.
But the problem is on the national stage,
Yeah.
that representation impacts everybody else.
Everyone else. Yeah.
And that's part of the
Potentially,
problem
yeah.
with that. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think this is a really, really good spot.
For the
Really, you think we should maybe talk about bourbon?
I think so.
I think we should.
I think so.
Absolutely. Because
So-
I've been sipping the daggone thing for not, 40 minutes? And
44.
44, yeah.
Yeah,
And
so that's
daggone it,
about
I'd like to
right.
talk about it because
Yes.
This is-
So this, yes, captain's prerogative here. We'll suspend discussion before we move on to Robert, and let's talk bourbon. So this is one that we have tried before, but has not been on air.
right.
Yes.
This is Wild Turkey Long Branch, which is the collaboration between Wild Turkey Distillery and Matthew McConaughey. The
We're
favorite-
big Matthew McConaughey fans. That's,
Who
All
isn't
right, all
these
right,
days?
all right.
that's right. Well,
I
you know,
mean, he's right up there with Ryan Reynolds as far as popularity.
Yeah.
he is, and he's going to be in the Yellowstone sequel, which is currently at the top of everybody's.
Oh, I did not know that.
Yeah, it's they're still working out.
I've not
details.
watched any of them, honestly.
I shameth on thee because it's some of the best television that's
Yellowstone
ever
is-
done.
yeah,
It's hot for all the right reasons. We all know Kevin Costner. We appreciate his craft. He is one of the driving forces. But it is Taylor Sheridan, the director, producer, and writer. I mean, he's like Joe Straczynski. He writes them all. And his vision has proven itself to be very, very compelling. Like I say, it's must-see TV for Mrs. Francis and I, and has been for some time. Unfortunately, Costner apparently and Sheridan aren't getting along, so the rumors go. Not going to say there's any truth to that. Not to say there isn't. But they have announced that the end of the 5th season, they've done the first half, but they haven't even filmed the second half. That's going to be it for the flagship. Although they've got some spin-offs, which have been excellent. And McConaughey is in talks for the sequel. What that looks like, everybody's talking. Nobody knows.
But he's a great actor. I mean,
Absolutely.
he really
Anything
is.
that he can, for him to go to television and headline a major series like this, one that's especially very popular, I see only good things. I mourn Kevin Costner's departure, of course. But he's got a project he's working on that he's a movie called, I think I'm going to get this right, Horizons. It's a Western. And Costner in Westerns has done a very, very good job. He's saying this
almost
is
as good as Costner in baseball.
well, that's right. Yeah, he's basically saying, from what we're hearing anyway, this is going to be as good or better than Dances with Wolves was with regards to hitting the popular. I know we have our issues with some of that, but it still was a great movie. I mean, it won him Best Director, Best Picture, and all that stuff. He's saying this movie will supposedly be that.
Yeah.
We'll see.
McConaughey takes a broader range of parts than Costner has, really, in his career. As good as Costner has been,
Yeah,
there's something to say about McConaughey as, a much broader actor.
that's true.
Right,
Even
he's
though his
done-
Texasness comes out a lot, but it's not exclusively that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, he has done romantic comedies. He has done drama. What was the dragon movie?
Rain of Fire.
Rain of Fire.
Yeah, which
he was the bald American guy, which I didn't even realize at first when I
Right.
watched that. I was like, holy crap, that's Matthew McConaughey.
That's right, and that was an earlier role for him, and it was. I
Yes.
mean, he could.
He was pretty buff for that too.
Yes, he was.
Yeah.
He's amazing what he's done. I mean, he's even done Doritos commercials for God's sakes.
Yeah.
He's my wife actually read part of his autobiography, and she had it on audio. I listened to pieces of it, and he is apparently the real deal. He
Yeah.
really is, and he's also a bourbon aficionado to kind of circle us back.
Right, right.
And he has partnered with Wild Turkey, which was his bourbon of choice.
Right. I mean, this is not just putting his signature on a bottle.
Right.
He's working with the distillery
Yeah.
on this bourbon.
That is something about him that I think that makes him authentic and likable.
Yeah.
Is that
Authentic.
he
Yes.
just doesn't allow his name to be used for anything. He's involved, like Ryan Reynolds.
That's correct. Yeah.
If Reynolds is going to be involved in something, have his name on it, he's going to be involved.
Aviator Gin, I believe, is the
Yes.
brand of that
which he
he's-
sold for what he said was an embarrassing amount of money.
Which, yeah, he's also one of those guys that you would just love to sit and have a beer with because he's got this amazing sense of humor.
Yes.
I mean, a young lady.
Self-deprecating and funny
Yeah.
and just dry. And
Quite a guy for a Canadian.
yes,
Yeah, he's the guy that somebody on Twitter photoshopped his head onto her prom date that broke up with her, and he picks this up on his own and says, "How about we Photoshop my head onto his yearbook picture too?" I mean, it's just this is just this that's just the good humor, and I think he's probably one of the greatest. Both of these guys are some of our greatest national
Yeah.
treasures.
But Robert, you brought up a word that I've been thinking about over the last few weeks a lot is authenticity.
Oh, I love, yeah,
You know,
absolutely.
to me, the center of the whole advertising mess that some major corporations are finding themselves in is they've abandoned authenticity
Yes.
and
Oh yeah, and
tried
once
to reach out to new markets, which is great,
Mhm.
but those efforts lacked
authenticity.
by definition. I mean, when you're appealing to someone dressed as Audrey Hepburn, there's no authenticity there.
Right. Well, there is only one Audrey Hepburn.
Yes. So anyway, comments about Long Branch. Of course, it's amazing.
It is.
We've had it before, and we've commented before that it was.
We had it
terrific.
at our good friend in the Holy Land.
Mhm.
His
The Holy-
house.
The Holy Land being Nelson County.
Yes,
That's correct. Yes.
Well, is there another?
Yeah.
Well, some people would say yes. There's one, several thousand miles away at the.
Oh,
Where-
Jerusalem, Israel, those.
Oh,
that
the
Holy
Mediterranean
Land.
kind of butts up and turns into a beach there. But
Yeah.
yes,
Oh,
the Holy Land
that
is
one.
Nelson.
We're talking about the Kentucky Holy Lands, as we call them.
Yes. We had it there when we all went down for the day. Had some awesome smoked meats.
Yes.
Indeed.
That was a wonderful day, and we had it there, and it was. I like a sweeter bourbon,
It's definitely that.
and
yes.
it's probably the sweetest bourbon that we've had before. Certainly sweeter than anything else we've had on the show because it is sweet from the very beginning.
It is. Even
It's-
with the ice in it, it's still got that sweetness, which I remember I had it. I'd been wanting to try it for so long. I just hadn't had a chance to buy it. When we were out at his place, and he says, here's what I got. What do you want? And I said, I got to go with the Long Branch because I really wanted to see it. I was stunned at how sweet it was, but I took a drink of it quickly before the ice had the opportunity to melt.
You need that profile to compare against.
Right, yeah.
To know what the straight versus the neat versus the slightly watered down and chilled, where that flavor opens
Bloomed.
up.
I like that
Yes,
word better
bloomed.
because
Yes,
it because it
blooms, yes.
Watered down implies bad, even though it's a good
Well, I
thing.
tell you what, that 122 proof Booker's, that needed to be watered
Well,
down.
absolutely, that prohibition style. I had some of that neat the first time I had it, and I had a headache for a day. It was just God. It was just thou shalt not. It was just not designed that way. And in my ignorance, I didn't know any better, and I've learned, and as we've learned as we've grown on.
Well, it has taken us a long time to really get a handle on.
One might call
a lot
us
of things.
hard-headed. I suppose we could ask our wives. They might.
No,
Let's
let's not
skip a bit,
Let's
brother.
skip,
Right?
yes,
That's
yes.
right. No, let's not talk about that.
But because we've tried so many, we've not really until recently, in the last 6 to 12 months, really settled on a small number of bourbons that we can really delve into.
Right, and we found some really great gems.
We have,
Yeah, we've
have,
learned
and
enough.
it's not to say the ones we tried before that weren't great gems either, because we have really. One of these days, one of the things we need to do is go through all of the episodes we've done, make a list of all the bourbons that we've tried.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going by
And
memory.
how?
Yeah. We've gone with the memory at best
Yes.
at this point, and of course that fades over time because
It does. I mean,
folks, we've almost done 200 episodes. Oh, I will. Let me give this brief shout out. We have over 5,000 downloads for Snakes and Otters, folks.
Awesome.
Coming up on 6. We're at like 50. Last I checked was 5,900 and some odd.
is that just the podcast, or does that include the YouTube downloads? Because the YouTube
All of the
views
above.
are pretty
All of
high
the above,
on
yeah,
some.
because because Podbean, we love our folks at Podbean. They're the ones that do the hosts. This takes into account all downloads from all different.
I don't think it does. I don't think that includes what is watched on YouTube, because I remember looking at the YouTube views.
might be right. That's
and I
great.
saw a number on there that
Because
was
YouTube doesn't
hundreds
count
and
as-
hundreds of
Yeah.
views.
It
Right.
doesn't count as a download.
Right.
The Podbean downloads would just be
The audio.
the
yes.
the other formats.
Yeah. Yes.
the other format, like Apple Podcast
Yes,
or whatever.
Or
Actually-
Stitcher and
actually,
Spotify
yes,
and
actually-
iHeartRadio. Let's go ahead and name them, guys. 'Cause-
Yeah, actually bringing it to a device.
Right.
from
or
there.
listening online either.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. So yeah, and you may be right. I suspect
certain
you are.
of that,
Yeah,
yes.
that's right. So,
So
it's even bigger than that.
It's even bigger than that. Yes.
Yeah, and you will find. I went ahead and pulled the badge. For Podbean creates little badges that you get once you reach these milestones. So I'm going to put that onto them. It's my next posting, by the way, on our
good.
website. It's going to be that congratulations to us.
Yes.
Aren't we great?
Oh, no.
Over 5,000. The next milestone is 10,000. But we'll be there pretty darn quick. It won't take us long.
So, just
Thanks
from
to our
memory,
listeners.
to add on to what you're talking about, I'll attempt to pop out some of my favorite bourbons here.
Okay.
So,
okay, we can do that.
Prohibition style, the Old Forester 1920,
Amen. Love
Yes.
it. Yeah, it's one of my favorites.
Yellowstone Select,
Yes, that's the black label or the white label.
white label,
White label. That's the one I had.
white
yeah, that's
label,
right. Yeah.
Yellowstone Select,
Very good. Very good.
very good and moderately priced at $38.
That's right.
Very, very good. Of course, this Long Branch,
Yes.
It's definitely there. Yeah.
what we had last episode in the Old Forester Statesman. So that's 2 Old Foresters in the list.
Yes.
Oh well, yeah.
Well, yes, we have multiple Old Foresters that are
Right. We haven't even finished. I bought all 4 of the Whiskey Rose series,
Yes.
which are the ones by the years. We've only done 2 of those.
the
No, 3.
3.
No, we've done 3. We did the 1920 and
the
the
Prohibition.
and the 1897, which is bottled in bond. We did those first 2 together, and we did the 1870, which was the original style last
Right.
time. We still have the 1915 to go. So that's
Well, I
or
think
1910.
that's a
1910.
challenge for the next
That's-
episode.
next
'Cause
time
we
we're
are
about-
at Studio F.
Yeah, we
next
still
time.
yeah.
Yes.
So that's my intention is to bring
Yes.
that one out.
And then my other big favorite that I really, really like is the Monks Road Small Batch.
Yes, yes,
So
I would agree.
I think that one's kind of a limited production that might not stay out. That
Good question. Good question.
move now to the Monks Road 5th District series will be out there more.
Right, I think so. I mean, we've had our little tour out there of not really a tour, but we've had our little time together.
Jaunt.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes,
to the
yes.
to the great Log Still Distillery folks out in
They have a
wonderful.
really nice little. I hesitate to call it a bar because all they serve is Michter's, obviously. But it was a nice little joint.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
It was.
So yeah, the Monks Road Log Still Distillery in the Holy Land, just down the road from the Gethsemane
monastery,
and
Trappist Monastery. That's
Trappist
right.
Monastery.
World
So-
famous for many years. That's where Merton wrote his
Merton's
Yes.
classics. Yeah,
7-story mountain.
that's right.
Yes.
Very good. Very good. Some of us has rubbed off on this heathen over here. It sounds like.
Well, there was a big article in the Bellarmine Alumni Magazine.
Well, that's where his
Yes,
collection
because
is.
the Merton Center is there.
Yeah,
yes.
that's right.
So-
All of his papers are.
there was a nice long article about getting the 7-story mountain published, and how
it was not
kind of-
easy.
yeah, it was kind of this thing of, okay, well, we'll print 5,000, and then they end up printing it's like 100,000 in the first couple of years. And
Right.
it caught on.
Yeah.
And
so
it is a
much.
perennial seller.
Yeah,
Yes,
it and St. Augustine's Confessions are the 2 biggest selling conversion stories of all time.
Yeah,
That's
I
pretty
mean,
high praise.
7-story mountain became something that nourished the soul of the 1950s and early 1960s American.
Very much so.
Was it that early that it was written?
It was his first
Yes.
book. Yeah, that's
Yes.
correct.
No, I
Yeah,
knew
it
that,
was-
but I didn't realize it was written that
originally
early.
Published in what, 48 or something like that?
I was
Oh,
going to
wow.
say like 50, 51. It's post-war because his brother is mentioned in there, and his brother died during the war, and there's a brief mention through that. But you're right. He was just beginning that.
You're right. It's early 50s.
Yeah,
Okay.
I
I
think
did not realize it was that early.
I think he may have written it in the 40s, but I think by the time it saw publication, it was early 50s. But you're right for essentially that decade and up through Merton's death, and of course once he died in the manner that he died, it exploded onto the world stage even greater than it was before, and it's worth a read, folks.
It was really, even during his lifetime, it was such an incredible.
It's what made him a
unexpected
superstar.
success.
Yeah.
Again, it really was something that fed people's souls in a time of post-war, Cold War materialism era.
I think it still does in that way because
Yeah, it does.
You look
It's
at
timeless.
when you talk about when you get into the 60s into the 70s, you're talking about a period of who are we, what does everything mean?
Yes.
You're talking about
Yes.
Vietnam and all of that. It's just
Yeah, there's a nihilism that it combats very effectively.
yeah. And that's really both nihilism and narcissism are, I think, the two great evils that are constantly needing to be combated.
It is, yeah. They are the 21st century's biggest evils, probably.
Yes, and
Nihilism
they were born in the
narcissism.
20th, and I mean, narcissism obviously goes much farther back than that. But I mean, the extremes that both have gone
Certainly,
to.
they're interconnected.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah, I think you can. Well, nihilism, you could probably trace a little bit of that to Nietzsche, but I think a lot of it is World War One, as we so often put forth.
Yeah.
That's
Well, I think the nihilism you trace to the early part of the 20th century, but the narcissism you trace to the latter part of the 20th century, and it is born
yeah.
out of nihilism. I think either you want to call it a response or a reaction or a direct line. It doesn't matter.
A natural follow-on.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably a little bit of all of those
Yeah,
things.
yeah.
And they're definitely connected in one way or another.
All right, cool. So
Fascinating.
we turn bourbon break into cultural criticism.
we're wont to do that. From
Yes,
time to
That's
time.
what we do.
It's what we do.
That's what we do.
We are critics of the culture. I mean, both, and critics not necessarily in the negative sense always, because sometimes a critic is a good thing.
Sure. Yeah, we don't.
Right, I
We,
mean,
don't- we will celebrate that which is done well.
Yeah,
and
I
that
mean,
which
we
applies
want
to principles.
Again, that bowling alley when you put the bumpers up and you don't let the little kids roll into the gutters, but that's what we're trying to bat the culture back into a good place.
That's right. But without a participation trophy.
Yes, yes.
You're getting a lot of mileage out of this bowling analogy. I can see that.
I think this is going to be a regular thing.
Yes, we're
because
going to have to develop the bowling and the baseball
I'm
analogies.
realizing
Oh,
how
you know.
powerful it could be, and I just thought of it while we were sitting here, and I've had 2 glasses of bourbon.
Well,
Loud, obnoxious, and full of beer.
Well, Hemingway did say you're supposed to write drunk and then edit sober. So it's kind
That's
of what you're
fair.
doing. It's-
Yes,
I-
after
yeah.
having written, I'd say that's fair.
You know, there's a new whiskey out, Hemingway branded.
Yes, I saw
Oh
that.
no, I did not know this.
I heard about
Ooh.
this.
All over Facebook. It's not bourbon, but it is a Hemingway branded from
Whiskey.
his estate whiskey.
Well, we might have to bring that one in. I mean, just for the
Yes.
yeah,
Listeners, if
just
you're
for the
not
name.
aware, Francis idolizes
careful with the word. Admires.
admires
That's right, strongly. That's right.
strongly
yes.
Hemingway.
Yeah, I think any writer of fiction has to acknowledge his contributions. You just have to.
Yes.
He changed everything.
There are certain writers that, whether you like reading their works or not, are icons and giants.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Hemingway is one of them.
absolutely. Indeed, he is.
For in particular American literature.
Yes.
It is, but he's a different. Joyce was his compatriot, a contemporary, and of course they couldn't be far more disalike.
Yeah.
Joyce is of course he's a unique taste anyway.
Yeah.
I have not
I
yet.
thought Joyce wrote earlier than Hemingway.
It was a bit, but Joyce's Ulysses was published
early
immediately
1900s, isn't it?
immediately post-war.
I was thinking it was earlier than that.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it's immediately post-war. And
No, Portrait of the Artist of a Young Man is earlier than
That is correct. That's right.
early
Yeah,
part
but
of
That's
the
1890s, isn't
Yes,
Right,
that's
yeah.
like right at the turn of the century.
yeah, and Ulysses, it might have been pre-war, but it's right around that time. Whereas Hemingway is absolutely post-war, but immediately post-war because The Sun Also Rises was like 1926.
Right, because he was still getting experience. He was newspaperman before
exactly
during
yeah,
the war.
and of
Well,
course,
I mean,
ambulance driver during the war.
ambulance driver. Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
And,
it? That would have been Eliot and Orwell.
Yeah, those guys
Would
were
have
around.
been more right in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joyce was winding down, as they were, and as Hemingway was winding.
But I mean,
up.
think about the giants that we just mentioned.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I mean, think about that. I mean, that's almost the equivalent of
Yeah.
the genius of the founding fathers,
Just,
right there.
I mean, just limiting to it, and Eliot's a special case because he's Anglo-British. But you talk about you go from Cooper to Twain to Faulkner to Hemingway. Faulkner and Hemingway are contemporary.
They are, yes.
And then Eliot at the same time. Again, Faulkner, Hemingway, Eliot are that post-war trying to find meaning in the lost generation.
Fitzgerald was along the same time too, and,
Yeah.
and wrote in very similar. They were friends actually.
Yeah.
In many ways, he was writing of that same lost generation style and outlook.
All right. Well, I'm chastising myself as captain. I've let us go down.
You have let us
too
go down
many
because
rabbit
holes everywhere.
So
we
Yes,
need to,
I
Robert.
thought we were going to be able to get in because we started the bourbon break at about 44 minutes. That was 20 minutes ago.
bring us home, Robert.
Robert.
All right, so
You want us to read ours one
yes,
more time?
as I want to do, I like you guys to recap,
Very
not
quickly.
recap, just repeat your
James
quotes.
Madison, Federalist Number 10, 1787. Pure democracies have ever been spectacles of turbulence and contention, have ever been found incompatible with personal security or the rights of property, and have, in general, been as short in their lives as they have been violent in their deaths.
Which the TLDR is too long, didn't read. Mob rule sucks.
Yes.
This one here is not too long. If voting made any difference, they wouldn't let us do it. Mark Twain.
Right. Okay, so that's the foundation I'm working with. And I kind of picked my quote more ahead of time than I normally do. I didn't pick it before I had heard your guys.
Okay.
Although I had heard Martin's as I was reading through the quotes, looking for something that was appropriate that spoke to me.
But you didn't pick it during bourbon break. Like
No, not like I
Sometimes
You have been known to do that.
Which
I
I have
believe.
been. I have been. Matter of fact, in my lead up to actually giving it, I am still sometimes picking it out.
Really?
Yes, there have been a few times, not many, where I have been, trying to decide, and I'm just kind of
Between one or another, I suppose.
yeah.
That makes sense.
So this is from Thomas Jefferson's first inaugural address,
Okay.
and now this says March 4th, 1801, but I think that's incorrect.
No, that would be right.
Yes, you're right, because Adams was 1796. Yes.
Right.
Anyways, it is from his inaugural address, and he says, "If there be any among us who would wish to dissolve this union, or to change its republican form, let them stand undisturbed as monuments of the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated, where reason is left free to combat it."
So basically, that's so incredible because there's so many layers that's working on.
Yes.
But it's, hey, these, somebody that wants to disturb our form here, it's okay. Because we're going to combat them intellectually,
Yes.
not ad hominem.
That's right. This is
Not
this is debate of
violence.
ideas, and we are so confident in our form that we know it will withstand or perhaps even benefit by criticism.
But I
Morphing is
think the
necessary.
important
The important part is
he's
defending
saying
it with reason.
you're
That's right.
defending with reason, and it will stand up and go through the test of time and knock down these other ideas.
I think the operative word in that whole quotation is that word reason, because that's what he's basing everything on. Is we bring it on. If we are debating each other in the court of reason, we will always win.
See, I think that's not the most. It's important. I don't
Yeah.
think that's the most important part.
Okay, what is it?
For me, the most important part is let them stand undisturbed as monuments. He says of the safety, but I would say to the safety with which error of opinion may be tolerated.
Yeah,
That's true.
It's-
We can weather dissent. In fact,
Yes,
we welcome it.
and we welcome it because
Yeah,
that's the
that's it.
implication. We welcome it because as we have talked about so much these last two episodes, that you have to be able to debate your ideas. You have to be able to support them. You have to be able to understand your opponent's ideas in order to defend your own. Because otherwise, how do you know what to defend? You devolve into a shouting match of "because I said so."
So, in other words, the concepts of whim or passion
Or whimsy.
or whimsy have no place in public discussion.
Yes, I think that is exactly correct.
Yeah, I'm thinking that's exactly what he's
and
saying.
I think what
if you
he's
can
saying
debate your
here-
idea reasonably, we'll listen to you, and you'll be protected in all ways.
Right, because that is the core, very literally,
Yeah,
the heart,
right.
core, heart
Yeah,
of the First Amendment.
sure.
Because when the government squashes free speech,
Right.
they're squashing debate, they're squashing
Dissent.
dissent, they're squashing the discussion,
Yeah.
the exchange of ideas. And that is more important to our survival as a society than anything else. The free and open exchange of ideas with one another, not with those we disagree with, not just those we agree with. Because again, an echo chamber, once you get to the point where everything is an echo chamber, everything dies.
there's
Democracy does not die to thunderous applause. It dies to thunderous echoes. I was taking a Padme Amidala quote and turning it around.
But there's another piece in that too, that dissenters should be safe.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, and then
Because
we are unique in that.
Dissent isn't dangerous.
Right.
You know,
Difference of opinions are not dangerous.
right? I mean, that's often bandied out there of, you know, oh, you just don't like dissent, or you know,
Well-
we're dissenting, and it's like, look, it's okay.
I,
Dissent is not dangerous.
I'll give you another one that's I've heard ultimate millions of times in the political discussion amongst my own family members all the times. But it's always the other party, mind you,
Yeah.
are destroying our country. And yet those on the opposite side are saying, but you are destroying our country. I'm sorry. It's kind of like you go back to Jurassic Park. You can't destroy the world. You can't do that.
Well, a
doesn't
country
work that
can
way.
be destroyed.
Yes, I know, but not by the words someone speaks.
No, not by words
Right.
themselves.
Exactly.
I mean, by actions, certainly. But,
Fueled and inspired by words, most definitely.
yeah,
but
here's, how do you stop that? It's not enough to just say you're bad because you're destroying our country.
That's right.
You have to offer the counterpoint
Well, that's kind of it.
and persuade people that that's the right way to
There's
go.
an intellectual bankruptcy and laziness, sloth on that position of they are destroying our country. I said, where's your better idea?
We've got to be against everything they do because they're destroying. Okay, well,
That's therein lies the issue. Then it becomes partisan political.
I agree with you that their policies are misguided, but how do we counter that? One,
right.
we have to persuade.
And we have to do it by not by destroying them. Because destroying dissent is the worst thing you can do in any form of government
Yeah.
that is based on freedom of any kind.
Yeah, because it always comes around. You think,
Yes.
You think, oh, well, I need these powers to destroy that dissent. Well, guess what? If you're giving yourself those powers, you're giving it to them too.
Yes.
And when you're in the dissent, you're going to get crushed.
And that used to be universally recognized.
It's not
That those who govern politically were loath to do something really radical because of the fear that it could come around and bite them in the ass.
Yeah,
Now,
He who lives by the sword dies by the sword.
exactly.
exactly.
Now, one of the just to throw a little bit of humor in here. So, what you're saying, Martin, is absolutely true because people just don't think about that. When we were still in college, the Emperor and I remember this very distinctly. We were driving down, Bishop Lane. Where it goes past the post office and the KFC headquarters, right? And we were headed towards Poplar Level Road. And he was talking about this was when he was in his communist phase, which he is most definitely not in anymore. And I said to him, look, if the revolution ever comes, you are going to be the first guy they put up against the wall.
Absolutely.
And he understood that, which he had to grant that point. And I don't know if that was the turning point in his ideological growth or not, but
You'll take credit for it?
I will absolutely
Go
take
right
credit.
ahead.
So you're responsible for his volt face?
I am. I like to
his
think so,
conversion
yes.
story. You were knocking him down on the road to Damascus. shall we say?
Apparently. Now, the thing is, though, since his accident, I don't even know that he remembers the moment.
No, but that gives us the freedom to create whatever we wish.
Exactly. But the point is the same, though. Those who advocate for those sorts of things, as soon as they are no longer in the majority, are the next ones put up against the wall.
That's right.
Look at J.K. Rowling.
Yeah.
Well, that's
She
a good
was.
idea, yeah.
I mean, she is very much a proponent of LGBT rights and all of that. She's very, she is not she's not Ron DeSantis. Let's, use a polar opposite. And yet, because of her stance on the trans issues of, people who are biological males in dressing rooms and bathrooms for biological females, her stance against that,
Her statements accordingly. Yeah.
she has been just demonized and made into a Hitler because of this.
That's right.
And she comes from a background of, if I'm wrong about this, I apologize, but I believe there was abuse in her background.
There was, as best I
And
recall.
this is part of her reasoning, is that is, to use the modern left's terminology, very triggering for her. It would be very triggering for her and others like her to have a biological male in what should be a safe space. And again,
She's been pillared.
she's been pilloried for that.
Mostly because I think that of her status. If you can attack someone with the renown that she has, you make people listen to you.
Well, I think she was attacked because she, less that, is that she broke ranks, according to some. Yeah. And, if you betray on one issue, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
It's
Judas once is Judas always.
Right. And it's that ideological purity. And that's what Jefferson's quote is about.
Yes, it is. I'm
it
glad
is
you
railing against ideological purity. And the ideological purity on the left, the right, the middle, the forward, the back, I don't care.
Yeah. Well,
it is bad.
And there's another piece to it as well.
ultimately
in that
dehumanizing.
it's awesome to be passionate about your ideas, but you have to then let reason temper the passion. And again, go back to the idea of you have to be able to debate and defend.
Right.
How do you handle dissent? Do you destroy the dissenters? No, you destroy them rhetorically, intellectually. You make a more compelling argument than they're able to make.
In many respects, then, you're suggesting that the highest form of talent in this society we're speaking of is the capacity to articulate.
It's to take something you're passionate about, but to be able to then apply that passion and persuade others
it's articulation,
in a rational manner.
Well, it's so, to put it from a theological perspective, we are all called to evangelize. Okay. Now, the difference between that ideal, which is, you bring everybody to your side with, from a Christian perspective, you would say with love and charity. But from a secular side, you would say convince them so that they want to join you.
Right.
Right.
Well, proclaim
as opposed to pummeling them into submission so that they have no choice but to join you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is a question of persuasion, not of bludgeoning.
Right.
Yeah.
So the pummeling is where you are allowed to vote because voting doesn't matter.
Okay.
Whereas joining your side is, Martin, your quote, where you get to say, all right, let's all agree on, we're going to send these guys to Washington or to Frankfurt or Lansing, and they're going to figure out the best way to move forward because we trust them.
Yes.
We have listened to their ideas. Yes. We have debated them.
We don't know what to do, but we think you'll figure it out.
Right. We may have some ideas and some principles we'd like to see upheld, but we don't have the time for it, or we don't have the inclination to do that particular work. So we want you to do it for us.
Wow, that's a whole nother hour.
Oh yeah,
Concept of trust in a legislative body or an executive function.
well, ultimately that's what
Or
it's
the
supposed to be.
judicial.
yeah,
Well, that's correct.
to,
Yeah, 'cause-
to figure out an issue of the day. We trust you. We like you said, there's a principle that we feel in our hearts, but how to translate that into legislation, we don't know. But we're trusting you to do that.
yeah, and
That's
that's
why
that's
we
the
sent you
conversation.
there.
That's the conversation that constituents should be having with their elected representatives. Is
And-
what's this? How's this align with the principles that we espouse?
Without destroying or disrespecting
Mm-hmm.
the inherent dignity of the human person, but without destroying those who disagree,
Mhm.
because it's a recipe for disaster, whether it's civil unrest, civil war, or dissolution of the union. Ultimately,
Right.
if these things that we're talking about, this pummeling to submission that seems to be the preferred way to go about things today, at some point somebody's going to prevail in that. That's going to be disastrous for the country if it's allowed to continue.
Disastrous for the human spirit.
Yes,
Right, because all of us must live under what laws are made.
Yep.
We must all be willing to live under them.
Yeah.
yes,
That means we find that middle ground, as it were, of that reasonable approach, to use the words that we've been
Yeah.
talking about
I mean,
here.
Political victory is necessary, but political destruction isn't.
right. Now, obviously, the problem with applying this today is that it presumes a relatively stable and agreed upon set of morals and ideals and ethics.
Ooh, yes.
Yes,
And
yes.
that's where we have
Because obviously
parted ways in some size.
yes, and my former pastor, as he liked to point out, we tolerate people.
Mhm.
We can be intolerant of ideas and actions.
Right.
Because the idea of, hey, let's round up all the Jews and put them on rail cars to Auschwitz. Yes, that is an idea we are absolutely intolerant of.
Correct. And that's just one example of many.
That's it, one example of many. But to be intolerant of the person destroys that inherent dignity.
That's right. We're using the principle as a weapon it was never intended to be.
Right. And so how do you, when you don't have that shared set of morals, how do you navigate and the different things we're looking at? Obviously, I don't want to, I hesitate to use it, but it's just the example that's in front of us because of what's in the media all the time nowadays. But how do we navigate the trans rights issues so that we are all either equally satisfied or equally unsatisfied? Because
Yeah.
often that's what a compromise is.
And part of that,
Out, demonizing people on both sides.
Agreed.
yeah.
Yes.
And of course, part of that, the difficulty is there's not even an agreed upon set of words
Right.
to even describe it.
Right.
I mean,
In fact, that's often the battlefield.
one person's gender affirming care is another person's child mutilation.
Right.
So when you can't agree upon even that level of, well, what are we even going to call this? And when you become suspect of the motivations of people using those terms,
Right. Doesn't matter which term we're talking
right?
about.
You don't. There's no way to find a common ground of, well, yeah, of course it makes sense to do it this way.
Right.
You can't even get to that point of, yeah, we all ought to agree on X because we don't even agree on how to describe X.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point, Martin.
Yeah,
How do you
well
agree on X
phrased,
when you
too.
can't even describe what X is?
That's right.
Yeah, that's a brilliant point.
And when actors in the public square have a vested interest in being deceptive about X, what do you do?
Right. And again, doesn't matter what X we're talking about here or which side we're
That's right. Yeah.
Because it's all
We pride ourselves at Snakes and Otters. We are never partisan. We will skewer either side as necessary. and we'll work from the.
I think we can be very partisan at times, but we are still willing to skewer our side as well as,
Well,
as any
there's
other.
some truth to that. Yeah.
but we seek purity, not ideological purity, but purity of the idea. We're hoping to find a truth.
We are truth seekers. I think that's just simply the
That's correct.
best way to
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah.
And again, that far too many would hear, well, yes, I seek truth too, but the truth is this, or my truth is this,
Yeah.
and your truth is that.
Well, Bella Oxmix, I got to be the unity, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And and it's one of the reasons why I chose this Jefferson quote is that it recognizes that there is a public square that we all should be participating in.
But
And
that participation comes with a responsibility to participate in an honest way.
In an honest way, to listen, to contemplate, to think, and to consider the possibility that you might be wrong.
Ooh, yeah, that goes against human nature.
It's
at
really
times.
hard to do, Robert. I'm never wrong.
Well, you're wrong at least once
It's
about
that-
being wrong. About being never wrong, yes. But that's kind of the thing, though. The founders, they embraced that. You know, now
There's
to be
that wisdom
fair-
and genius again.
To be fair, individually, I would be willing to bet that there were guys on both sides, Federalists and Anti-Federalists, certainly on the slave issue, that were unwilling to consider that they were wrong.
Yeah,
But
that's
yet-
a bridge too far for many.
But they were still willing to work on a compromise to figure out a way that they could make the two opposing opinions work together in a system that would allow both of them to live. Now, ultimately, it came to the point where, no, we can't have both at the same time.
Yeah, sooner or later.
Sooner or later, it's got to be one or the other. But they saw that, yes, okay, we don't agree, but we still have to get along.
Well, that's the Missouri Compromise. That's Henry Clay. That's trying to figure out a way to. The critics would say that's just we're going to kick the can efficiently down the road.
Yeah, and I don't even mean, because that's a very specific
It
situation.
is. Yeah, but
I'm just talking about, back to the point of creating the Constitution and creating the framework to go forward.
But they also had a recognition of what are the issues that are worth going to the extreme for.
Right, especially at this moment in
Yes.
time.
Yeah,
What's not worth going there? Let's work those out at the table. And then when it goes beyond to these the core of the human experience issues, then we've got to, we might have to go all the way. We might have to go to the mattresses, as they would say.
Right. And I guess the way I would frame what you're saying is, frame is actually redundant because I'm about to say, but they had to build the framework in which those things would be settled before they could settle them, right?
that's true. That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Because there was no way
What
to,
does a settlement look like?
yeah, there was no way to come up with an answer unless you could figure out what the process was to get to that answer.
And you had to agree on that first.
And you had to agree on that
Yeah,
first.
makes sense.
And that's kind of what we're missing anymore. An idea is put out there, and automatically the answer is the other guy's evil and must be shut down and destroyed.
Yeah.
We have been lamenting that for, almost the entirety of our
200 episodes,
200
yeah.
episodes
Yeah.
here. That it is the worst possible thing that has happened to our country. Since the Civil War. And I only count that Civil War as a bad thing. It's because 600,000 people had to die to settle that issue.
Yeah.
Right.
Which is just, that's shameful in and of itself that it had to take that.
But original sins only get purified by blood.
Oh my,
Oh my goodness, how wonderful!
Wow.
I was
You,
going to
again,
say fire, but I think
Very
that
Christological again.
oh my God, that is so,
That's right.
so true on so many levels.
Yeah.
I applaud you.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Matter of fact,
Yeah.
that almost deserves a,
Word boner.
Well, it's a phrase boner, I guess you give it that. But
Yeah. So
All right.
yeah. There's just it's there. That's where
Okay.
that's where we are.
we have pummeled the expired equine. I think.
indeed, it's time to Captain.
Yes. So Francis, what's next, sir?
Oh, guys, the new order cometh, as they say. This is the last episode where we are as we are.
Yes, fundamental change.
Fundamental change is coming. It is
Snakes and
in the
Otters.
wind. That's correct. Where now we are 3. Next episode, and from that point forward, we will be 5. 2.
5 is not right out.
5 is not right out. 2 new members are joining our Snakes and Otters club. Shall we call ourselves? Organization? Brotherhood. I love that. That's
Brotherhood
the,
of Snakes and
We've
Otters.
always
right.
called it Brotherhood. Yes,
That's right. Yeah, the Brotherhood of Snakes and Otters. Yes, 2 more members will be admitted to permanent residency. They will join us on all of our new podcasts. Hey, perfect opportunity with our new equipment here. We can
Yes.
do this where we won't talk over each other much.
Well, I think we'll probably talk over each other.
I know. I'm
Especially-
the
especially
optimist.
as they get acclimated to the style.
Now, I will say this. One of them in particular has listened to all our episodes. He went through and listened to all of them, so he's got a good background on
That's
those.
more than I've done.
I was going to say, that's pretty awesome. Yeah, that's right.
Because I have not listened to all of them.
So what you're saying is we need to replace you with him.
Well,
Oh, sir.
Nobody
is that
can ham-
rude?
nobody can hammer like Robert
That's Robertus Hamarius.
Okay.
Malleus.
Malleus. That's his Malleus.
I'll not ask you to prove that statement.
No. Well, seriously, folks. Next episode,
We'll introduce our 2 new members.
introduce our 2 new members, and we will wrestle with some interesting questions. So we're actually going to kind of plan a little bit about what we're going to be talking about. So join us next.
Hold on.
It'll
What
be a
is
history
It's a
episode.
history
It'll be a
episode.
history episode. That's correct.
is-
That's right.
The Habsburgs, right?
Habsburgs, yes.
Is that already?
Yes,
it
the
is.
Habsburg, the
That's
history
'cause
of Europe
Robert
is
has
the
been
history
talking
of the
about this
Habsburgs.
freaking issue, question, topic for a long time. You've been lobbying
Nearly
for this
to the beginning.
since
yes.
the beginning. Yes, sir. So you're captaining. You know that, right?
I am captaining,
Yeah.
and we were talking about using this as a kickoff to diving more into European history.
That's correct. We have discovered we've been rather Amerocentric in recent days, and it's time to kind of go
Nothing
back.
wrong with that. Nothing wrong
with that,
nothing
but
wrong with
but a little Eurocentrism is not bad either, and I think we can.
right, because it'll show us why we are so good in contrast.
Yes, a contrast with the Euro weenies will make us look.
Oh, well, there's some greatness over there that we have to call out, though, and
Well, maybe they built a couple of architecture things that are pretty nice, but
Well, I think we've discovered who our contrarian will be in these next few episodes. But yes, we're going to talk about the Habsburg
Like
Empire.
we didn't already know that?
I mean, come on! If it weren't for us, they'd all be just walking around going Deutschland, Deutschland.
And Uber Alles.
Yes, of course. Oh Lord, I swear, you guys. Join us next episode, folks, when everything changes.
Hope you enjoyed another pointless discussion of eternal questions. Remember, new episodes drop every second and fourth Friday at 6 a.m. Eastern.
Spread the word. We're on all the major podcast platforms. And leave us a review. That helps others find us.
We're on Instagram, Twitter, as well as our website, snakesandotters.com.
I'm Martin.
And I'm Robert.
And I'm Francis. Join us next time.